Don't come to the family dinner. My wife doesn't want you there. I read the text message 3 times. Then, I canceled all the payments. The next day, my son showed up at my doorstep, desperate. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're reading this, please listen to my story until the end. I had always believed that family was the single most important thing in the world. For 67 years, I had built my entire existence around that simple, unwavering principle. After my husband, Arthur, passed away 5 years ago, my son Caleb became the gravitational center of my universe. I had guided him through the awkward teenage years, supported him through a degree change in college, cheered the loudest when he started his business. And when he married Mallory St. James 3 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. Or, at least, I thought I did. The Tuesday afternoon when everything changed started like any other Tuesday in late October. The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of burning leaves, but inside my kitchen, the air was sweet with cinnamon and nutmeg. I was preparing Arthur's famous apple pie, a recipe passed down from his grandmother, for the upcoming family dinner. It was a tradition we had maintained religiously every month since Caleb was a boy. I hummed along to the radio, my hands dusted with flour as I worked the dough. I felt a sense of contentment. These dinners were the highlight of my month. I pictured Caleb's face when he'd see the pie, the way his eyes would light up just like his father's used to. My phone buzzed on the granite counter, vibrating against the marble rolling pin. I wiped my hands on my apron, smiling. It was probably Caleb asking if I needed help carrying anything, or perhaps Mallory checking on the time. I unlocked the screen, a text from Caleb. Mom, don't come to dinner this Sunday. Mallory doesn't want you there. I stared at the screen. The smile froze on my face. I read the words again, and again. Don't come, Mallory doesn't want me. My hands started to tremble, a fine tremor that rattled the phone against my palm. There was no explanation, no softening of the blow, no I'm so sorry, Mom, or let's reschedule. Just a cold, dismissive command. I sat down heavily in the kitchen chair, the mixing bowl of spiced apples forgotten on the counter. The smell of cinnamon suddenly felt cloying, sickening. I called Caleb immediately. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. On the 3rd attempt, Mallory answered. Hello, Eleanor. Her voice was cool, formal. Not the voice of a daughter-in-law speaking to the woman who had hosted her for Thanksgiving 3 years in a row. Mallory, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to steady it. I just received a very strange text from Caleb. There must be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, she interrupted, her tone sharp. We need family time, just us, you understand. The breath left my lungs. Just us. Mallory, I am his mother, I am family. We need to establish boundaries, Eleanor. It's healthy for a young couple. Caleb agrees with me. The line went dead. I sat in my living room for hours that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting long, melancholy shadows across the floorboards Arthur had laid himself. Questions swirled in my mind, a tornado of confusion and hurt. When had I become an outsider in my own son's life? What crime had I committed to deserve this treatment? Was I truly the problem? That night I didn't sleep. I paced the hallways of the house that suddenly felt too large, too quiet. I kept replaying conversations from the last 6 months, searching for clues I had missed. And in the silence of 3:00 a.m., the pieces began to click together. I remembered a Sunday brunch 2 months ago. Mallory had been looking at the crown molding in the dining room. This house is just massive, isn't it, Eleanor? She had said, a tight smile on her lips. It must be so exhausting to maintain. Have you ever thought about how much equity is just sitting here collecting dust? At the time, I thought she was concerned for my well-being. Now, I heard the hunger in her voice. Then, there were the financial requests. Caleb had asked me to help with their mortgage payment twice in the last 4 months. Business is just going through a rough patch, Mom, he'd said, looking at his shoes. The market is volatile. I had sent the money without hesitation. What kind of mother would I be if I refused to help my child keep a roof over his head? Last month, he'd asked for help with Mallory's car repairs. The transmission is shot, he told me. It's going to be $5,000. We just don't have the liquidity right now. I had transferred $5,000 the same day. But now this, excluded from my own family dinner, banned from seeing my son. By Thursday morning, the hurt had calcified into something else, something harder, something Arthur would have recognized. It was anger, yes, but it was also clarity. If my son and his wife wanted to exclude me from their lives, they had every right to do so. They were adults, but they would no longer do it while spending my money. I walked into my home office, Arthur's old study, and sat at his heavy oak desk. I pulled out my ledger. I looked at the numbers. The sheer volume of gifts and loans I had dispensed over the last 18 months was staggering. I had been blindly signing checks, desperate to be useful, desperate to be loved. I picked up the phone and dialed my bank. "Good morning, this is Sarah at First National. How can I help you, Mrs. Vance?" "Good morning, Sarah," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "I need to make some changes to my account, immediately." "Of course, what would you like to do?" "I need to cancel the automatic monthly transfer of $1,500 to Caleb Vance." There was a pause, the standing order for his mortgage assistance. "Yes, cancel it today." "Done," Sarah said, the typing audible in the background. "Is there anything else?" "Yes, the credit card ending in 4590, the one I issued to Caleb for emergencies." "You want to lower the limit?" "No," I said, staring at a framed photo of Caleb on the desk. "I want to cancel the card entirely." "Okay, consider it done." "And one last thing," I added. "The payment for the Willow Creek Country Club membership. I believe it's deducted from my account on the 15th. "Yes, Mrs. Vance, that's quite a large sum." "Stop that payment as well. They can bill Caleb directly." When I hung up the phone, I expected to feel guilty. I expected the familiar pang of maternal worry. Will they be okay? Will they struggle? But I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. Within 24 hours, the silence from my son was broken. My phone exploded. First, a text from Mallory. "Alina, I think there's been an error with the bank transfer. It didn't go through." I didn't reply. Then, an hour later, a text from Caleb. "Mom, the credit card was declined at lunch. It was embarrassing. Call the bank, please." I deleted the message. Then, more urgently, "Mom, we need to talk. Something is wrong with your accounts. Call me immediately." I turned my phone off and went into the garden to deadhead the roses. On Friday afternoon, the inevitable happened. There was a frantic knocking at my front door. I looked through the peephole and felt my heart clench. Caleb stood on my porch. He looked terrible. His hair was unkempt, his designer shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Behind him, parked in my driveway, was their silver SUV. Through the tinted window, I could see Mallory. She wasn't getting out. She was sitting there, her phone pressed to her ear, watching. Was this how it ended? My son, coming to my door only when the money stopped flowing. I took a deep breath, smoothed my cardigan, and opened the door. "Mom," Caleb's voice cracked. He looked relieved and agitated all at once. "Thank God you're home. I've been calling and calling." "I know," I said calmly, blocking the doorway. "Can I come in?" He glanced nervously back at the car. I stepped aside, just enough to let him pass. He walked into the foyer, bringing a frantic energy into my quiet house. I led him to the living room, the same room where I had rocked him to sleep as a baby, where we had celebrated his high school graduation, where Arthur had taught him to tie a tie. "The payment stopped," he said without preamble. He didn't even sit down. He just stood in the center of the rug, looking at me with accusation in his eyes. "Yes," I replied, remaining standing. "They did." "Why, Mom? We're counting on that money. The mortgage payment is due on Monday. Mallory's car payment is late." "Caleb," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Sit down, we need to talk." "I don't have time to sit. I need to fix this bank error so I can." It wasn't an error. The words hung in the air between us. Caleb froze. What? Sit down. He sank onto the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped tightly between his knees. I remained standing, looking down at this man who was my son, but who suddenly felt like a stranger. You sent me a text on Tuesday, I began. You told me not to come to family dinner because Mallory doesn't want me there. Caleb flinched. He looked away. Mom, look, that was. Mallory was just upset. You didn't call, I continued, ignoring his excuse. You didn't explain, you didn't try to soften it. You just excluded me. You cut me out. It's just one dinner, Mom. You're overreacting. Is it just one dinner? I walked over to the desk and picked up a folder I had been compiling since Thursday night. For 6 months, I have watched our relationship change. I have listened to Mallory make snide comments about this house. I have felt the distance growing. But the one thing that hasn't changed, the requests for money. That's not fair, Caleb snapped, his face flushing red. We've been struggling. Business is hard. When was the last time you called me, Caleb? Just to ask how I was doing. Just to talk. He opened his mouth, then closed it. When was the last time you visited without needing something? We're busy, he shouted, standing up again. We're trying to build a life. You should be supportive. Busy excluding me from family dinners while cashing my checks. The words came out sharper than I intended, cutting through his defenses. If this is about the text, I'm sorry, okay? He threw his hands up. There, I apologized. Now, can you please unfreeze the transfer? Mallory is freaking out. She didn't mean to make me feel unwelcome, I asked quietly. No, she thinks you're too involved. She thinks you need boundaries. I see. So the boundary is that I cannot be present in your lives, but my money is welcome to stay. Mom, please, stop being dramatic. We need that money. I opened the folder. I did some calculations, Caleb. Since your father died, and specifically in the last 18 months since you claimed the business was struggling. I pulled out a sheet of paper. Mortgage help, car payments, the country club membership, emergency funds, the down payment for the jewelry business Mallory wanted to start that never materialized, the vacation to Hawaii you said you needed for stress relief. I looked him in the eye. $87,000, Caleb. His eyes widened. He looked pale. It couldn't be that much. It is exactly that much. $87,450 to be precise. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. And in return, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, I get a text message telling me I am not wanted. Mom, please, he begged, his voice cracking. He looked like a child again, caught with his hand in the cookie jar. We need the money, the house payment. If we miss it, the bank will charge penalties. Mallory will. She'll leave me if I can't fix this. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the fear, yes, but I also saw the entitlement. He wasn't sorry for hurting me. He was sorry the ATM had broken. You need to leave, I said. He stared at me, stunned. What? Go home, Caleb. Go back to your wife. Think about what you want from this relationship with me. Mom, you can't do this. I have already done it, I said. And Caleb, if all you want from me is my money, then we have nothing left to discuss. You're being selfish, he yelled, the facade of politeness finally dropping. You're sitting in this big house alone with Dad's money while we struggle. It's not right. Get out. He stared at me for one more second, his face twisted in ugly anger. Then he turned and stormed out of the house. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I watched through the window as he marched back to the car. He got in, and I saw him slamming his hands against the steering wheel. Mallory was shouting at him. Then, the car peeled out of the driveway and sped down the street. I locked the door. I turned the deadbolt. Then, I walked back to the living room and sat in Arthur's old leather armchair. It still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco and old books. I pulled my knees up to my chest, burying my face in my hands. I didn't cry gentle, movie star tears. I sobbed. I cried the wrenching, gasping sobs of a mother who has just realized a terrible, ugly truth. My son had been using me. Perhaps Mallory was the driving force, the architect of this cruelty, but Caleb, my sweet boy, the boy I had raised to be kind and honorable, he had allowed it. He had chosen his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. But as the sun set and the room plunged into darkness, the tears eventually stopped. I wiped my face. I looked at the empty fireplace. I wasn't just a grieving mother. I was also Arthur Vance's widow. And Arthur had taught me that when you are under attack, you don't curl up and die. You prepare. This wasn't over. I knew my son, and I was beginning to know his wife. They wouldn't just walk away from the money. They would come back. They would escalate. I needed to be ready. The weekend passed in a blur of gray fog. I didn't leave the house. I barely ate. But by Saturday morning, the weeping had stopped. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest, but it was being crowded out by something colder, sharper. Necessity. I was 67 years old. I was a widow, and I was under siege. I showered, dressed in my most professional Navy suit, the one I used to wear to school board meetings, and drove downtown. Harrison Cole's law office was located on the third floor of a brick building overlooking City Park. I had known Harrison for 30 years. He and Arthur had played golf every Sunday until Arthur's heart gave out. Harrison was a man of the old school, mahogany furniture, thick carpets, and a belief in absolute discretion. "Eleanor," he greeted me, bypassing the handshake to squeeze my shoulder gently. He looked older than I remembered, his hair now completely white, but his eyes behind his wire-rimmed glasses were as sharp as ever. "Come in, tell me everything." I sat in the leather chair across from his desk. I laid out the folder. I showed him the bank statements, the list of transfers, and finally, the text message from Caleb. Harrison listened without interrupting. He tapped a silver pen against his legal pad, his expression darkening with every sentence. When I finished, silence filled the room, broken only by the distant sound of traffic. "This is more common than you'd think, Eleanor," he said finally, his voice grave. "Adult children, especially those facing financial pressure, often stop seeing their parents as people. They start seeing them as resources, as assets." I flinched. "He's my son, Harrison, not a stranger." "That makes it harder," he countered. "But legally, we need to treat this as a hostile situation. You've cut off the money. That was the right first step. But I need to warn you, when the tap runs dry, people who feel entitled to the water don't just walk away. They escalate." "What do we do?" "We build a fortress," he said. We spent the next 2 hours dismantling the legal structures of my life and rebuilding them. We updated my will. For the last 5 years, Caleb had been the sole executor and primary beneficiary. "We're removing him as executor," Harrison said, his pen scratching loudly on the paper. "I'll appoint my firm as the temporary executor. It creates a buffer." "Okay," I whispered. "Next, a revocable trust. We move the house, your savings, and your investment portfolio into it. It adds a layer of protection and oversight. And finally, and most importantly, your power of attorney." He looked at me over his glasses. "Right now, if you were to have a stroke or an accident today, Caleb would be the one making your medical decisions. He would have access to your accounts to pay your bills." A chill went down my spine. The image of Mallory whispering in Caleb's ear while I lay in a hospital bed flashed through my mind. "Change it," I said, "immediately. We'll require 2 independent physicians to declare you incapacitated before any power transfers, and we'll appoint a professional fiduciary alongside Caleb. He won't be able to buy a pack of gum with your money without oversight." Walking out of Harrison's office, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I had protected myself, yes, but I had done it by building a wall against my own child. Sunday was the day of the dinner I wasn't invited to. I sat in my living room, the house silent. The ghost of the apple pie I hadn't baked seemed to hang in the air. I was staring at the wall, feeling the isolation wrapping around me like a cold blanket, when the doorbell rang. I jumped, Was it them? Had they come to scream at me again? I checked the peephole. It wasn't Caleb. It was Brenda Galloway, my neighbor from across the street. I opened the door. Brenda was holding a ceramic casserole dish wrapped in a checkered towel. We had been neighbors for 12 years, exchanging friendly waves and occasional chats about our hydrangeas, but we had never been close. "Eleanor," she said, her kind face etched with concern. "I saw Caleb storming out of here on Friday, and, well, I haven't seen you pick up your newspaper in 2 days. I made my chicken casserole. I know it's not much, but—" Something in her genuine concern broke the dam I had been holding up. My eyes welled up. "Come in, Brenda," I choked out. "Please." We sat at my kitchen table. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I smelled the roasted chicken and thyme. Over coffee and casserole, the shame I had been carrying began to spill out. "I feel so stupid," I confessed, staring into my coffee mug. "I let them use me. For months, years maybe, I thought I was helping, I thought." "You thought you were being a mother," Brenda said softly. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "Don't you dare call yourself stupid, Eleanor Vance. You love your son. That's not a sin." "He just stood there," I whispered. "He let her talk to me like I was nothing." Brenda sighed, a long, heavy sound. "My sister went through this with her daughter." I looked up. "Really?" "Oh, yes. It started with loans for the grandkids' tuition. Then it was medical bills that didn't exist. By the time my sister figured it out, her retirement fund was drained. They said it was for the family, but they were buying boats and taking cruises." "What did she do?" "She stopped crying and she started counting," Brenda said, her voice hardening. "She hired a forensic accountant." "A what?" "A forensic accountant. Someone who specializes in finding where money asterisk really went. My sister found out the tuition was actually being spent at a casino." Brenda squeezed my hand. "Knowledge is power, Eleanor. You know they took your money, but you need to know exactly where it went. It stops them from lying to you. It stops you from gaslighting yourself." I thought about the business loans, the car repairs, the vague emergencies. "Do you have a name?" I asked. By Wednesday, I was sitting in an office that was the polar opposite of Harrison. Dana Mercer's office was sleek, modern, and intimidatingly white. Dana herself was a woman in her 40s with a sharp bob cut and eyes that looked like they could scan a spreadsheet from across the room. She specialized in elder financial abuse cases. I felt a fresh wave of humiliation as I handed over the box of documents. Bank statements, credit card bills, canceled checks. It felt like handing over a diary of my own gullibility. "I need to know if the money I gave them was used for what they said it was," I told her. Dana didn't offer tea or sympathy. She just opened the first file, her eyes scanning the numbers. "If the money left the accounts, I can trace it. I can cross-reference public records, business filings, and credit reports. Give me a week." "Thank you," I said. "Mrs. Vance," she said as I stood to leave, "prepare yourself. In my experience, the reality is usually worse than the suspicion." Thursday afternoon brought the visitor I had been dreading, yet expecting. I was in the living room reading a book, or pretending to, when a soft, rhythmic knock came at the door. Not the frantic pounding of Caleb. A polite, confident knock. I checked the window. The silver SUV was there, but this time Caleb wasn't in sight. Mallory stood on the porch alone. She was dressed impeccably in a soft pink cashmere sweater and white trousers. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She held a potted orchid in her hands. She looked like the picture of innocence, a model from a lifestyle magazine. I opened the door, but I didn't unlock the screen door. "Hello, Mallory." "Eleanor," she flashed a bright, dazzling smile. "May I come in? I brought you this. I know how much you love orchids." I looked at the plant, then at her face. "Why are you here, Mallory?" "Oh, Eleanor, please, can we just talk? Woman to woman. Caleb is he's a mess. He's so emotional. I thought maybe we could have a rational conversation without the men getting involved." The audacity was breathtaking, but I needed to know what she wanted. I unlocked the screen door. 5 minutes. She breezed past me, her perfume, something expensive and floral, filling the hallway. She set the orchid on the entry table and walked into the living room, running her hand along the back of the sofa. "I really am sorry about the dinner text," she began, turning to face me. "I was having a terrible day. My hormones were all over the place. I didn't mean to be so harsh. You know how much I value family. You told me to my face that you needed boundaries, and that I wasn't welcome." "I was stressed." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Marriage is stressful, Alina, especially when business is tight, but that's why I'm here. Caleb and I have been talking. We're worried about you." I stayed standing near the fireplace. "Worried about me? In what sense?" "Well," she looked around the room, her eyes lingering on the high ceilings, the antique furniture, the view of the garden. "This place, it's enormous. And you're here all alone. It must be so isolating. So much work to clean, to maintain. We hate seeing you burdened like this." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "I manage just fine." "But for how long?" Her voice dropped to a tone of faux concern. "We were looking at some brochures. There are these wonderful luxury retirement communities just north of the city. Assisted living, meals provided, no yard work. It would be like a permanent vacation for you." My blood ran cold. "And the house?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Well," she smiled, and for a second the mask slipped. I saw the calculation in her eyes. "Naturally, Caleb is going to inherit it eventually. If you moved now, we could move in. It would solve our financial stress, which means Caleb wouldn't have to bother you for money anymore. And you would be safe and taken care of. It's a win-win." I stared at her. It wasn't just about the cash flow. It wasn't just the monthly transfers. They wanted the capital. They wanted the house. They wanted me out of the way, tucked into a facility, so they could play pretend in the home Arthur and I had built over 40 years. "So," I said slowly, "you disinvited me from dinner on Tuesday, and on Thursday you're suggesting I move into a nursing home so you can take my house." "Retirement community, Alina. Don't be dramatic. We're thinking of your well-being. At your age, living alone. People talk. They worry about your mental state. Isolation causes decline." There it was, the subtle threat. Mental state, decline. "Get out," I said. Mallory blinked. "Excuse me." "Get out of my house. Take your orchid and get out." Her face hardened. The sweet daughter-in-law vanished. Her eyes narrowed into slits. "You're making a mistake, Margaret. We're trying to help you. If you keep pushing Caleb away, you're going to end up dying in this big house all by yourself, and no one will find you for days." I said get out. I stepped toward her. For a moment I thought she might stand her ground, but then she scoffed, flipped her ponytail, and marched to the door. "We'll see how long you last," she muttered as she passed me. She slammed the door behind her. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands were shaking again, but not from grief this time, from rage. I went straight to the desk. I pulled out a fresh notepad. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to write. Thursday, 4:15 p.m. Mallory visited alone. Suggested I move to assisted living. Stated the house should go to Caleb now. Implied my mental health is declining due to isolation. Threatened that I would die alone. I looked at the words on the paper. Harrison was right. Brenda was right. This wasn't a family squabble. This was a hostile takeover. Mallory wasn't just a greedy daughter-in-law, she was a predator, and she had just signaled her next move. She was going to question my competence. I picked up the phone and called Dana Mercer's office. I got her voicemail. "Dana, it's Alina Vance. Please, dig deep. I need to know everything. I think they're planning something worse than just theft." I hung up and sat in the silence. I was in a war, and I had to win. Tuesday morning started with a phone call that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Mrs. Vance," Dana Mercer's voice was clipped, devoid of any warmth. "You need to come to my office. Immediately. I found something you need to see." "Can't you tell me over the phone?" I asked, gripping the receiver. "No, you need to see the documents." I drove downtown with a knot in my stomach that felt like a fist. Dana's office was just as sterile and white as I remembered, but this time her desk was covered in paper. Spreadsheets, printed emails, and photocopies of bank records were laid out like a battle map. Dana didn't offer me water. She gestured for me to sit. "Your son and daughter-in-law have been more than just careless with your money," she began, her eyes dark and serious. "They have been systematically exploiting you. It's worse than we thought." She slid a paper across the desk. "Let's start with the monthly mortgage assistance. You've been sending them $1,500 a month for 18 months because Caleb said their variable rate skyrocketed, correct?" "Yes," he showed me the statement. "He showed you a doctored statement," Dana said flatly. "I pulled the public property records and the bank liens. Their mortgage is fixed at 3.2%. Their monthly payment, including taxes, is exactly $908. They've been pocketing the extra $600 every single month." I felt the blood drain from my face. "But why lying about $600? "Because it adds up, but that's small change." She slid another document forward. "The $5,000 for Mallory's transmission repair last month. Mallory drives a Lexus leased through Caleb's consulting firm. All repairs are covered by the dealership under the lease agreement. The car was serviced, yes, for a standard oil change. Cost $0. So where did my $5,000 go?" "It went to a credit card payment for a Neiman Marcus account in Mallory's name." I closed my eyes. The handbag. I remembered seeing her with a new designer bag 2 weeks ago. She said it was a gift from a client. "And the big one," Dana continued, her voice grim. "The $20,000 you gave them 6 months ago. The seed money for Mallory's custom jewelry business." "She said she needed inventory," I whispered. "She showed me the logo designs." "There is no business license registered in the state," Dana said. "No LLC, no inventory purchases. However, 3 days after you transferred that money, a down payment of exactly $20,000 was made on a property." "A property?" "A vacation condo in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's listed under a shell company, CM Holdings, but the signatories are Caleb Vance and Mallory St. James." I felt physically sick. Nausea rolled over me in a wave. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep the room from spinning. They hadn't just padded their expenses. They were building a real estate portfolio with my retirement savings while I clipped coupons for groceries. "How much?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Total." "Based on these records, in the last 18 months, between the direct transfers, the credit card charges, and the fake loans, they have taken you for nearly $94,000. $94,000. Arthur had worked for years to save that kind of money. It was his sweat, his long hours, his legacy, and they had burned through it on purses and condos. "There's one more thing," Dana said. Her tone changed. It became softer, more cautious. "And Mrs. Vance, this is the part that concerns me the most. What could be worse than theft?" She turned her computer monitor toward me. It showed a list of internet search queries. I did a deep dive into their digital footprint associated with the shared financial accounts. Look at the search history from 3 weeks ago, just before they asked for the mortgage help again. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. October 12, average cost of memory care facility. October 13, guardianship laws for elderly parents in state. October 13, how to declare a parent incompetent. October 14, can a legal guardian sell a parent's primary residence? The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed, but I couldn't hear it over the rushing of blood in my ears. "They aren't just greedy, Alina," Dana said softly. "They are planning an endgame. They were building a case that you are incompetent. If they get guardianship, they control your assets. They can put you in a home, sell your house, and take everything legally." I walked out of Dana's office in a daze. The sun was shining, people were walking their dogs, cars were honking, the world was normal, but my world had shattered. They weren't just bad with money, they were predators, and I was the prey. I drove home on autopilot. I parked in the driveway and sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the brick facade of my home. My sanctuary. They wanted to take this from me. They wanted to lock me away in a room somewhere and sell Arthur's house so they could vacation in Arizona. I went inside and locked the door. I threw the bolt. I checked the back door. Locked. I went to the kitchen and made tea, but I didn't drink it. I sat at the table, the forensic report in front of me, reading the numbers over and over, letting the anger cauterize the wound of the betrayal. The sun went down. The house darkened. At 7:30 p.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Headlights swept across the living room wall. I froze. Then, the sound of a key scratching in the front lock. My heart hammered. I had changed the locks on my mind's to-do list, but I hadn't done it yet. I was a fool. The lock tumbled. The door opened. "Mom," Caleb's voice. "Mom, we know you're in there. The lights are off, but your car is outside." I stood up in the kitchen, clutching the report. I walked into the hallway light. Caleb stood in the foyer. He looked haggard, his face pale and sweaty. Mallory was right behind him, her eyes sharp, scanning the room as if looking for traps. "You changed the alarm code," Caleb said accusingly. "I tried to disarm it, but it wouldn't work." "Yes," I said. "I did. Why are you in my house? I told you to leave me alone." "We need to talk." Mallory stepped in front of him. "We know you hired an accountant, Alina. We know you've been snooping into our private finances." "Private?" I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "There is nothing private about the money you stole from me." "Stole?" Caleb flinched. "Mom, we never stole anything. You gave us that money." "Based on lies." I stepped forward, thrusting the papers toward them. "You told me the mortgage was $1,500. It's $900. You told me the car needed payments. It was a company lease. You took $20,000 for a jewelry business that doesn't exist." "The business is in development," Mallory shouted. "No, it isn't," I screamed back, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. "The money is in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a condo on Prickly Pear Drive. I know about the condo, Caleb." The color drained from Caleb's face completely. He looked at Mallory, panic in his eyes. "She knows." Mallory didn't panic. She went still, her face transformed. The mask of the aggrieved daughter-in-law fell away, revealing something cold and reptilian beneath. "So," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "you know, congratulations, you hired a spy." "I hired a forensic accountant, because I am not the fool you take me for." "You are exactly the fool we take you for," Mallory sneered. She took a step toward me. "You're a lonely, bitter old woman sitting on a pile of cash you don't need, while your son suffers." "Mallory, stop," Caleb mumbled, but he didn't grab her arm. He didn't step between us. He just stood there, useless. "I don't need it." I shook the papers at her. "It is my money. It is Arthur's money, and you are done spending it." "Are we?" Mallory tilted her head. "You know Alina behaving like this? The paranoia, the spying, the erratic mood swings. It really is concerning. People might start to talk." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she hissed, stepping closer until I could smell her expensive perfume, cloying and sweet, "that if you try to embarrass us publicly, if you try to sue us or spread these lies, we will have things to say, too. We have records, Alina. Incidents where you were confused, times you forgot things. We have witnesses who will testify that you are showing signs of dementia." My breath caught in my throat. The search history, how to declare a parent incompetent. "You wouldn't," I whispered. I looked at Caleb. "Caleb, you would let her say that. You know I am perfectly sane." Caleb looked at the floor. "Mom, you have been acting weird lately. Maybe you do need help." The betrayal hit me harder than the theft. My son, my beautiful baby boy. He was willing to label me insane, to strip me of my rights, just to protect his lifestyle. "You are threatening me," I said, my voice steadying. "You are threatening to put me in a home." "We're protecting the family," Mallory smiled, a cruel, tight expression. "And if you try to destroy Caleb, I will make sure everyone knows you are a senile old woman who has lost her grip on reality. I will get guardianship, Alina, and I will put you in the cheapest state facility I can find, and I will sell this house before the ink is dry." Something in me snapped, but it wasn't a break, it was a hardening. The last shred of maternal guilt evaporated. "Get out," I said. "Eleanor, be reasonable." "Get out," I screamed, a primal sound that seemed to come from my very bones. I grabbed the heavy ceramic vase from the entry table, a wedding gift from my mother, and raised it. "Get out of my house before I call the police and show them the fraud report. Get out." Caleb flinched back, terrified. Mallory looked at the vase, then at my eyes. She saw I wasn't bluffing. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You're making a huge mistake." "The only mistake I made," I said, "was letting you in." They backed out the door. Caleb stumbled on the threshold. Mallory grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the car. I slammed the door. I threw the deadbolt. Then I pushed the heavy hallway console table in front of the door. I sank to the floor, my back against the wood, clutching the vase to my chest. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. They had said it. They had said the quiet part out loud. Guardianship, dementia, the nursing home. I scrambled for my phone and dialed Harrison's cell number. It was 8:30 p.m., but he answered on the second ring. "Eleanor." "They came here," I gasped. "They broke in. Mallory threatened me. She said they would claim I have dementia. She said they would get guardianship." "Did they hurt you physically?" Harrison asked, his voice sharp. "No, I chased them out, but Harrison." Caleb stood there. He agreed with her. "Okay, listen to me carefully," Harrison said. "You cannot stay there tonight. They are desperate and they are dangerous. If they file a petition for emergency guardianship, or if they call the police claiming you are having a psychotic break, having you alone in that house makes you vulnerable. You need to be somewhere else. Leave my home. Just for a few days. Step back, let them sweat. Do you have somewhere to go?" I thought of Brenda. Yes, I think so. "Go, pack a bag, turn off your location on your phone. Do not answer their calls. Call me when you are safe." I hung up and ran across the street. I didn't care that I was wearing slippers. I banged on Brenda's door. When she opened it and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside. "They threatened me," I told her, shaking in her arms. "I saw the car," Brenda said grimly. "I was about to call 911. Harrison says I need to leave." "My daughter has a beach house in Duxbury," Brenda said immediately. "It's off-season, it's empty, I have the keys." By midnight, I was 2 hours away from the city. The beach house was cold, smelling of salt and cedar. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the large sliding glass door, looking out at the black ocean, listening to the rhythmic crashing of the waves. I turned off my phone. For the first time in 40 years, I was truly alone. No husband, no son, just me against the dark. I thought about the little boy I used to read to. The boy who brought me dandelions. That boy was dead. He had been consumed by the weak, greedy man who had stood in my hallway and let his wife threaten to lock me away. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. I watched the moon rise over the water. Let them panic. Let them wonder where I was. Let them realize that the Bank of Mom was not just closed, it was fortified. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a general planning a counterattack, and when I went back, I wouldn't be bringing apple pies. I would be bringing subpoenas. The 3 days at the beach house in Duxbury had been a cold, salty purgatory, but they had done their job. The panic that had sent me fleeing from my own home had settled into a grim, iron-willed resolve. The ocean air had cleared my head. I wasn't scared anymore. I was prepared. I drove back to the city on Friday afternoon. The house stood exactly where I had left it, the brick glowing in the late autumn sun. It looked peaceful, betraying nothing of the violence that had happened in the foyer just 72 hours earlier. I walked up the porch steps, keys in hand, and stopped. There was a white envelope taped to the front door at eye level. My heart gave a single, hard thump. I scanned the street, no silver SUV. I ripped the envelope down and went inside, locking the door behind me immediately. I stood in the hallway and opened it. It wasn't a typed legal notice. It was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. I recognized the scrawl instantly. It was the same handwriting that had once filled Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts. Dear Mom asterisk. I've had time to think. Seeing you so upset the other night, it broke me. I know things got heated. I know Mallory has a sharp tongue, and I'm sorry I didn't defend you better. I've just been under so much pressure. I'm still your son. I'm still the boy you raised. I drove by today hopping to talk, just us, but you weren't home. I sat on the porch for an hour just thinking about Dad. I miss him. I miss sitting in his old chair and talking about the Red Sox. I miss you, Mom. Please, let's fix this. We're family. Family forgives. Love, Caleb. My hands trembled holding the paper. The words swam before my eyes. I miss him. I miss you. For a moment, just a fleeting, dangerous moment, I felt the armor crack. This was my child. The child I had nursed through chickenpox, the child I had held when his father died. He sounded so lost. Maybe he really was just under pressure. Maybe Mallory was manipulating him, twisting his mind, and he was reaching out for a lifeline. But then I looked at the desk where Dana Mercer's report sat. I remembered the line item, $20,000, condo down payment. I remembered the silence in the room when Mallory threatened to put me in a home. Love could be weaponized. I knew that now. Family could be a tool for manipulation just as easily as a source of comfort. I folded the letter and placed it in the evidence file. Saturday morning brought the second wave of the offensive. At 10:00 a.m., a delivery truck pulled up. A young man marched up the walk with a vase so large he had to use 2 hands. 24 long-stemmed red roses. I took the card. To the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for, let's start fresh. Love, Mallory. I stared at the blooms. They were perfect, velvety, and expensive. Probably charged to the credit card I hadn't managed to cancel yet, or paid for with the money they had skimmed from the mortgage payments. I didn't put them in water. I walked across the street and knocked on Brenda's door. Oh, Alina. Brenda wiped her hands on a dish towel. You're back, I was worried. I'm back, I said. I thrust the vase toward her. Do you want these? They're roses. They're gorgeous. Who sent them? The people who threatened to have me committed, I said dryly. I can't stand the smell of them in my house. Brenda's face fell. She took the vase gently. The love-bombing phase, she said, nodding knowingly. My sister got jewelry right before they asked for the deed to her cabin. I'm not taking the bait, I said. Good, come over tomorrow afternoon, Brenda insisted. I've invited a few people who understand. Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Caleb. I stared at the screen. Harrison had told me not to engage, let them sweat, but the letter was gnawing at me. I missed Dad's chair. I needed to know. I needed to hear his voice to see if the remorse was real, or if it was just another line in the script. I answered, hello. Mom, his voice was thick, wet. He sounded like he had been crying. Oh, thank God you picked up, I thought you hated me. I don't hate you, Caleb, I said, my voice steady. I am hurt, and I am angry. I know, he sniffled. Please, can we meet? Not at the house, somewhere neutral, just you and me, no Mallory. Where? Morrison's Cafe, tomorrow morning, like we used to. The breath caught in my throat. Morrison's. When Caleb was in high school, we went there every Saturday morning. He would order blueberry pancakes, and we would talk about his dreams, his fears, the girls he liked. It was our sacred ground. He was pulling every emotional lever he could find. Why, Caleb? I asked softly. Why do you want to meet? Because I love you, he cried. Because I've been an idiot. I've let money get between us and I hate it. I just want my mom back. I want to make it right. How? I asked. How do you want to make it right? There was a silence on the line, a beat too long. Then he spoke, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Mom, look, if we could just sit down. Mallory and I are really in a hole. The bank is calling about the business loan. If you could just help us this one last time, just to clear the debt, I swear. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red button. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the sound of a door closing. The letter, the roses, the tears, it was all a performance. The ticket price for the show was another check. I turned my phone off. That afternoon, Brenda's living room was full. I sat on a plush armchair, holding a cup of tea, looking at faces I had seen around the neighborhood for years but never truly known. There was Tom and Sandra, the retired couple from 3 houses down. There was Carol, who ran the book club. And there was Marcus, a young man I knew was in law school, sitting on the floor. I didn't want to come, I admitted to the room, feeling my face heat up. It's embarrassing to admit your own son is doing this. It's not embarrassing, Alina, Tom said, his voice gravelly. It's a crime. My grandmother went through it, Marcus spoke up. Her nephew convinced her to sign over power of attorney just in case. Within 6 months, he had drained her savings account. He said he was managing it. The hardest part, Sandra added softly, is accepting it. Accepting that someone you changed diapers for, someone you taught to read, that they can look you in the eye and lie. It's called financial abuse, Marcus said. And in law school, we learn that it's the most common form of elder abuse because it's the hardest to prove. Families hide it. Victims are ashamed. They think, I must have raised them wrong. But you didn't raise him to be a thief, Alina. He chose that. Listening to them, sharing the horror stories, something loosened in my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid, as Mallory had claimed. I was a victim of a very common, very ugly reality. What's your next step? Carol asked. My lawyer is preparing a trust, I said, and I've hired a forensic accountant. Good for you, Brenda cheered. Whatever happens, Tom said, leaning forward. You aren't alone on this street. If that SUV shows up and you feel unsafe, you call us. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I still have my baseball bat. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. It was a shaky sound, but it was real. Monday morning, the other shoe dropped. I was finishing my breakfast when Harrison called. His tone was different, urgent, clipped. Alina, listen to me. Do not panic. What happened? I just received a notification. Caleb has filed a petition with Adult Protective Services. My blood ran cold. The toast turned to ash in my mouth. He actually did it. Yes, the report claims he has grave concerns about your welfare. He alleges that you are showing signs of dementia, that you are paranoid, and that you are engaging in erratic financial behavior that is endangering your future. Erratic, I gripped the table. He's the one stealing from me. It's a standard manipulation tactic, Alina. He's trying to create a paper trail. He wants to look like the concerned son stepping in to save his confused mother. If he can get APS to validate his concerns, he can use that report to file for emergency guardianship. What do we do? I felt the fear rising, a cold tide in my chest. Harrison, they'll come here, they'll interview me. That is exactly what we want, Harrison said. I blinked. What? Let them come. Let them interview you. You are not incompetent, Alina. You are sharp, you are articulate, and most importantly, you have evidence. This is a massive tactical error on his part. How? Because right now, it's a family dispute. But once he involves the state, if we can prove he filed a false report to cover up his own fraud, that is a matter for the district attorney. Harrison's voice turned grimly satisfied. He just handed us the nail for his own coffin. The APS investigator arrived on Wednesday morning. Her name was Joan Prentice. She was a woman in her 50s, wearing a sensible gray suit and carrying a heavy briefcase. She had kind eyes, but a mouth that didn't smile. She looked like someone who had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. Mrs. Vance, she said, showing me her badge. I've received a report concerning your welfare. I'm required to investigate. May I come in? Of course, I said. I was dressed in my best slacks and a silk blouse. The house was spotless. Please have a seat. We sat in the living room. Joan opened her notebook. I have to ask you some standard questions to establish cognition, she said gently. Can you tell me the year? It is 2024. And the current president? I answered. Can you count backward from 100 by sevens? 100, 93, 86, 79. I continued until she held up a hand. Your cognition seems excellent, Joan noted, scribbling. Now, Mrs. Vance, the report alleges that you have been making irrational financial decisions. Large cash transfers, canceling established payments, aggressive behavior toward family members attempting to help. I took a deep breath. Ms. Prentice, can I show you something? Certainly. I reached for the file folder on the coffee table, the folder Dana Mercer had prepared. My son, Caleb Vance, and his wife are the ones who filed this report, correct? I cannot disclose the source of the report. You don't have to, I said. I know it was them, because I cut them off 10 days ago. I opened the folder. Here is the forensic accounting report detailing $94,000 of misappropriated funds over the last 18 months. Here is the proof that they lied about their mortgage amount. Here is the proof that the business loan they requested was used to buy a condo in Arizona. Joan stopped writing. She looked at the documents. She picked up the spreadsheet, her eyes scanning the rows of data. And here, I said, sliding the final paper across the table, is the screenshot of the internet search history from their shared IP address, dated 3 weeks ago. How to declare a parent incompetent. Joan stared at the paper for a long time. The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, she closed the folder. She looked up at me, and the professional mask slipped just a fraction. There was anger in her eyes, but it wasn't directed at me. Mrs. Vance, she said, her voice steel, you are clearly capable of managing your affairs. Your finances are well documented and organized. I am not senile, I said. I am just a mother who finally said no. I see that, Joan said. She packed the documents back into her bag. I see a lot of things in this job, but weaponizing protective services to intimidate a victim of financial exploitation, that is a particular kind of low. She stood up. I will be closing this case as unsubstantiated, she said, but I will be keeping copies of these documents for my internal report. Why? Because filing a false report with APS is a violation of state law, Joan said. And if you choose to pursue legal action against your son, my report will state that this investigation found no evidence of decline, but significant evidence of coercion by the reporting party. She paused at the door. You're a strong woman, Mrs. Vance. Don't let them make you doubt that. When the door clicked shut, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I walked to the mirror in the hallway and looked at myself. I looked tired. I looked older than I had a month ago, but my eyes were clear. Caleb had tried to use the system to destroy me. He had tried to gaslight the government into believing I was crazy. Instead, he had just given me the most powerful weapon in my arsenal, an official government record that I was sane and that he was a liar. I picked up the phone and called Harrison. The investigator just left, I said. And? She's on our side. She knows. Good, Harrison said. Now we wait. They're going to get desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I'm ready, I said, and for the first time I truly was. Thursday evening arrived with a heavy, anticipatory silence. The APS investigators' visit had been a victory, but I knew the war wasn't over. Caleb and Mallory wouldn't stop until they hit a wall they couldn't climb. At 6:30 p.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table eating a simple meal of pasta when I saw headlights sweep across the front window. I stood up and moved to the curtain. It was them. Caleb was getting out of the driver's side, holding a bottle of wine. Mallory was emerging from the passenger side, carrying a Tupperware container that looked like it held a cake. They weren't storming the castle this time. They were bringing offerings. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, swiped to the utilities folder, and opened the voice recorder app. I pressed the red button. Recording started. I slid the phone back into my cardigan pocket, screen facing out. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. Document everything, Harrison had said. Let them show you who they really are. I opened the door. Mom, Caleb said immediately, a hopeful, tentative smile plastered on his face. He held up a bottle of Chardonnay, my favorite brand. We come in peace, really. Mallory stepped up beside him, her expression a perfect mix of contrition and warmth. I made your favorite lemon pound cake, Alina. We hate how things were left the other night. Can we please come in, just for a minute? Every instinct in my body screamed asterisk, no asterisk. Every cell remembered the threats, the dementia accusations, the APS investigator sitting in my living room just yesterday. But I needed the final piece of the puzzle. I needed them to say it themselves. Come in, I said, stepping aside. They walked into the living room, settling onto the sofa like they hadn't threatened to have me committed in this very room less than a week ago. Caleb set the wine on the coffee table. Mallory placed the cake beside it. Alina, Mallory began, clasping her hands on her knees. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. I realize I came between you and Caleb, and that was wrong. Family should come first. Should it? I asked, sitting in Arthur's armchair, keeping my distance. My hand rested casually over my pocket. Of course, she leaned forward, her eyes wide and earnest. I grew up without a mother, you know. Mine left when I was 8. Maybe that's why I didn't understand the mother-son bond, but I see it now, and I'm sorry. It was a good performance. If I hadn't seen the search history, asterisk how to declare a parent incompetent asterisk, I might have believed her. Caleb jumped in, eager to smooth the waters. Mom, we want to make things right, really right, we thought. Maybe we could reinstate the Sunday dinners. We miss you. And the money? I asked bluntly. The air in the room changed instantly. The warmth evaporated. Caleb cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Well, we understand you were upset about the financial situation. We should have been more transparent. Transparent, I repeated. You lied about your mortgage. You lied about the car payment. You took $20,000 for a business that never existed. Mallory's smile tightened at the edges. Alina, I think there's still a misunderstanding. We did start the jewelry business. It just didn't launch. These things happen. No business was ever registered, Mallory, I said, keeping my voice level. I checked. Mallory froze. You checked. I hired a forensic accountant, I said. I know exactly where my money went. The condo in Scottsdale, the luxury purchases, the country club dues I was paying while you told me you couldn't afford groceries. Caleb stood up, his face flushing. You've been spying on us. That's insane, Mom. I had every right to know where my money was going. Your money, Mallory stood up too, her voice shrill now, the sweet daughter-in-law act crumbling into dust. You're sitting in this house, this huge, expensive museum all alone, while your son struggles. I am not struggling, I said, and neither are you. You are greedy. Greedy, Mallory took a step toward me. We are trying to build a life. We want children. We want a future. Is it so wrong to expect help from family? Expected. You expected my money. You're going to die someday, Alina, Mallory screamed. The words tore out of her, ugly and raw. That money, this house, it's all going to Caleb eventually anyway. You're just hoarding it. You're wasting it on nothing, while we actually need it. Got you. I felt the phone warm against my hip. So that's it, I said quietly. You think you're entitled to my assets while I'm still alive. It's practical, Mallory shouted. You're just being a selfish, stubborn old woman who cares more about her bank account than her own son. Mallory, don't, Caleb muttered, looking terrified. No, Caleb, she needs to hear it, Mallory spun on him. She's ruining everything. The house, the money, it should be ours. She doesn't need all this. We do. I stood up. I felt 10 feet tall. Get out of my house, I said. Both of you, now. Mom, wait, Caleb started. You'll regret this, Mallory hissed. We'll tell everyone. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are, bitter, paranoid, turning on your own son. I have this entire conversation recorded, I said. Silence, absolute suffocating silence. Caleb's face went white. He looked at my pocket. What? I have been recording since you walked in the door. The lies, The threats. The admission that you just want my death to come sooner so you can cash out. Mallory's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Leave, I said. If you are not gone in 60 seconds, I am calling the police and playing this for them. They fled. There was no defiance this time, just the scramble of rats caught in the light. When the door slammed, I locked it. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. Then I emailed it to Harrison. The next morning, Harrison went on the offensive. He contacted Caleb's attorney, a woman named Simone Wright. He informed her that we were prepared to file a civil suit for elder financial abuse, and that we would be presenting our forensic findings to the district attorney for potential criminal fraud charges. Unless they agreed to immediate mediation. The meeting was set for Tuesday morning in a conference room at Harrison's firm. The mediator was Judge Elias Thorne, a retired Superior Court judge known for his no-nonsense approach. I arrived with Brenda by my side for moral support. Caleb and Mallory were already there. Caleb looked smaller than I had ever seen him, slumped in his chair, staring at the mahogany table. Mallory sat rigidly upright, her jaw clenched tight enough to snap steel. Judge Thorne sat at the head of the table. "I've reviewed the preliminary briefs," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Let's keep this civil. The goal is resolution without litigation." "We are here to resolve a misunderstanding," Simone Wright began smoothly. "My clients assert that the funds in question were gifts, freely given by a mother to her son." "Gifts obtained through fraud are not gifts," Harrison countered. "They are theft." Harrison opened his file. He laid out Dana Mercer's report, page by page. October 12th. Request for mortgage assistance, $1,500. Actual mortgage cost, $908. Difference pocketed, $592. Fraud. He slapped a page down. November 3rd. Request for car repair, $5,000. Actual repair cost, $0. Funds traced to Neiman Marcus credit card payment. Fraud. He slapped another page down. April 15th. Request for business seed money, $20,000. No business registered. Funds traced to down payment on a condo in Scottsdale, Arizona. Fraud. Caleb flinched with every slap of paper. Mallory stared straight ahead, her eyes burning. "These are just numbers," Simone argued, though she looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Vance has a history of generosity. It's difficult to prove intent to deceive." "Is it?" Harrison asked. "Then let's look at the intent." He pulled out a laptop. "We have a recording from last Thursday evening, in Mrs. Vance's home." Simone looked at her clients. Caleb put his head in his hands. Harrison pressed play. Mallory's voice, shrill and distorted but undeniable, filled the quiet conference room. "You're going to die someday, Alina. That money, this house, it's all going to Caleb eventually anyway. You're just hoarding it." The silence that followed was heavy. Simone Wright closed her file. She looked at Mallory with an expression that clearly said, "You didn't tell me you said that." "And finally," Harrison said, "we have the matter of the Adult Protective Services petition filed by Mr. Vance last week." He slid the final document across the table. "The APS investigation has been closed as unsubstantiated." However, the investigator noted that the report appeared to be retaliatory in nature, following the cessation of financial support. Judge Thorne picked up the APS report. He read it over his glasses. Then he looked at Caleb. "Mr. Vance," the judge said quietly, "you tried to have your mother declared incompetent because she stopped giving you money." We were worried about her," Caleb stammered. "Worried about her checkbook," Judge Thorne corrected. "I've seen a lot of cases in my time, son, but attempting to weaponize the state against your own mother to force guardianship, that is a special kind of low." Mallory finally exploded. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, standing up. "She's blowing everything out of proportion, so we asked for help. That's what families do. We were planning for her future." "Sit down, Mrs. Vance," Simone hissed. "No. She's twisting everything to make herself look like a victim." Mallory pointed a shaking finger at me. She's a selfish old woman who won't help her own son. That house is too big. Her retirement accounts are just sitting there. We have dreams. We could be building something." "So you admit it," Judge Thorne said, his voice cutting through her tirade. "You believe you are entitled to her assets while she is still alive." "She's not using them," Mallory screamed. "She's just existing." "Actually," the judge said, "she is protecting herself from exploitation." Mallory looked around the room. She saw the disgust on the judge's face. She saw the resignation on her own lawyer's face. She sat down slowly. Harrison looked at me. It was my turn. "I don't want the money back," I said. My voice was calm. "It's gone, I know that. You spent it on condos and purses and lies." Caleb looked up. "Mom." "But I want total separation," I continued. "I want a legal agreement." "What are the terms?" Simone asked, opening her notepad. "1, I listed. No contact, none, for 1 year. No calls, no texts, no letters, no surprise visits." "Agreed," Simone said. 2, Caleb will sign a document formally renouncing any claim to my estate. My will has already been changed, but I want this on the record. If I die tomorrow, you get nothing." Caleb winced as if I had slapped him. 3, Harrison added. "No further false reports to APS or any other agency. If you do, we will immediately file criminal charges for the fraud we have documented here today." Simone looked at her clients. She whispered to them for a moment. Mallory looked furious, shaking her head, but Simone said something sharp to her, and she slumped back. "They accept the terms," Simone said. The papers were drawn up right there. The sound of pens scratching on paper was the only noise in the room. When it was done, Judge Thorne stood up. "Mrs. Vance, I'm sorry you had to go through this, but you've done the right thing." I stood up. I walked to the door. "Mom," Caleb said. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "I loved Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "He would be ashamed of me." I turned then. I looked at him, really looked at him, one last time. I saw the weakness. I saw the regret. But mostly, I saw the consequences of his own choices staring back at him. "Yes," I said softly, "he would." I walked out of the room, Brenda right beside me, and I didn't look back. The air in the hallway was cool and clean. I took a deep breath. I was free. The aftermath of the mediation didn't come with a bang. It came with a silence that, for the first time in 18 months, felt like peace rather than isolation. I went home. I unlocked my door. I made a cup of tea. And for the next 2 weeks, I simply existed in my own space, reclaiming the corners of the house that had felt tainted by their greed. But while my world quieted down, Caleb and Mallory's world began to disintegrate with terrifying speed. The truth, once exposed to the light of a courtroom, has a way of spreading like a contagion. The first domino fell 10 days after the mediation. I received a phone call from Greg Mitchell, Caleb's business partner in the consulting firm. I had known Greg for years. He was a decent man with 3 kids and a mortgage. "Eleanor," he said, his voice stiff and awkward. I felt I owed it to you to call." "Hello, Greg. I wanted you to know that, as of this morning, I have formally dissolved the partnership with Caleb." I gripped the phone tight. "I see." "Word got out, Eleanor," Greg sighed. "About the mediation, about the accusations. In our line of work, trust is the only currency we have. Clients trust us with their livelihoods. I can't be in business with someone who carries that kind of ethical liability." "I understand, Greg," I said softly. "He came to the office yesterday," Greg added, his voice dropping. "He cried, he begged, but I couldn't do it. I have to protect my own family." 3 days later, the Willow Creek Country Club, the prestigious social hub where Mallory had been holding court, pretending to be a wealthy socialite on my dime, sent a letter. It was addressed to me, but carbon copied to Caleb. Since I had stopped the unauthorized payments, the account was in arrears. But more than that, the board had voted to revoke their membership permanently under the Conduct Unbecoming clause. Apparently, the story of a son trying to declare his mother incompetent to steal her estate didn't play well on the golf course. Then came the call that surprised me the most. "Mrs. Vance," a male voice, hesitant and deep. "This is Travis. Travis St. James, Mallory's brother." I stiffened. "Hello, Travis." I heard what happened," he stammered. "My dad and we are mortified. We had no idea, Mrs. Vance. Mallory told us Caleb's business was booming. She told us they were helping you manage your estate. We didn't know they were." "Stealing," I supplied. "Yes," he whispered. "Stealing, I just wanted to say. Our mother raised us better than that. I don't know what happened to Mallory, but please know the St. James family is sick over this." "Thank you, Travis," I said. "I appreciate that." I hung up. Even her own blood was distancing themselves. The final blow came 6 weeks later. Brenda knocked on my door, her face a mixture of excitement and pity. "You need to see this," she said. We walked across the street. There, planted in the front lawn of the house I had helped Caleb buy, the house where I had once hoped to babysit grandchildren, was a "for sale" sign. "They're selling," Brenda said, "and I heard from the realtor. It's not a happy sale, it's a distress sale." The collapse was total. Without my monthly injections of cash, without the credit cards, and with Caleb's business gone, the lifestyle Mallory had carefully curated crumbled like wet paper. The divorce filing hit the public records a month later. I didn't rejoice. I didn't pop champagne. I just felt a hollow, aching sadness. Mallory St. James, the woman who had screamed that I was hoarding wealth, had filed for divorce the moment the money ran out. She cited irreconcilable differences and financial deception, claiming Caleb had promised her a lifestyle he couldn't maintain. She fought for everything. She wanted half of the house proceeds. She wanted alimony. But there was nothing left to take. After the mortgage was paid and the debts were settled, Caleb walked away with less than $15,000 and a bruised soul. He had lost his business, his wife, his home, and his mother. And I began to live. 1 year later, the morning sun streamed into my office. It used to be Arthur's study. For 5 years, I had kept it exactly as he left it, a museum to a dead man. But 6 months ago, I had packed up his books, donated his old coats, and painted the walls a soft, calming sage green. I bought a modern desk. I hung my own watercolors on the walls. It was my room now. I sat at the computer, reviewing a case file for the *** Elder Justice Coalition ***. "You have a gift for this, Alicia Chang, the director, had told me. Victims trust you. They know you've been in the fire." I was working with a woman named Mrs. Higgins. Her grandson had convinced her to sign over the deed to her car. I was helping her navigate the legal process to get it back. It was hard work, sometimes heartbreaking work, but it gave me a purpose I hadn't felt in decades. I wasn't just a widow anymore. I was an advocate. My calendar, once empty except for the dreaded monthly dinners with Caleb and Mallory, was now a kaleidoscope of activity. I had joined Brenda's book club. I was taking an advanced watercolor class at the community center. I had reconnected with 2 old friends from my teaching days, and we met for lunch every Tuesday. And I had traveled. The photo on my desk wasn't of Caleb anymore. It was a picture of me, standing on a cliff on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, the wind whipping my white hair around my face, a wild, free smile on my lips. Arthur and I had always talked about going to Scotland. We saved for it. We planned it. But life and then death got in the way. 4 months ago, I went alone. I stood on that cliff, overlooking the churning gray Atlantic. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small urn containing a portion of Arthur's ashes. "We made it, Arthur," I whispered to the wind. "I'm here and I'm okay." I scattered him into the wind. I cried, but they were good tears, healing tears. I realized then that by protecting the assets he had left me, I hadn't just saved money. I had saved the freedom he wanted me to have. When I returned from Scotland, the gossip mill, mostly fueled by Brenda, filled me in on the fates of my former family. Mallory's fall from grace had been steep. Her influencer dreams had died the moment the scandal broke. Sponsors dropped her. Her follower count vanished. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a dental office in the suburbs, living in a shared apartment with 2 roommates who were half her age. She was still looking for a rich husband, but her reputation preceded her. And Caleb. My heart still gave a small, painful tug when I thought of him. He hadn't fought the divorce. He hadn't fought anything. He had moved into a studio apartment in a rougher part of town. He had taken a job at a big-box electronics store, working on the sales floor. Minimum wage plus commission. He looks different, Brenda had told me, having seen him at the grocery store. He's lost weight, he looks humbled. I also heard, through Harrison, that Caleb was attending a weekly therapy group for people recovering from financial enmeshment and narcissistic relationships. He was trying. He was rebuilding from the ground up, without my help. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, not sending him a check. But I knew now that sending a check wouldn't be love. It would be poison. My 78th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I had expected to spend it quietly, maybe a nice dinner with Brenda. Instead, when I walked into my living room at 6:00 p.m., the lights flicked on and 20 people yelled, "Surprise!" I gasped, my hand flying to my chest. There was Brenda, grinning, holding a cake. There was Alicia Chang from the coalition. There were the ladies from the book club, my painting instructor, and even Tom and Sandra from down the street. The room was filled with laughter, with warmth, with genuine affection. These people didn't care about my bank account balance. They didn't care about my real estate assets. They liked me. They liked Eleanor Vance, the woman who made bad jokes, who painted terrible landscapes, and who fought like a tiger for the vulnerable. I blew out the candles, and for the first time in years, I didn't wish for things to be different. I wished for them to stay exactly as they were. Later that night, after the guests had left and the house was quiet again, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. It had no return address, but I knew the handwriting. I sat on the porch swing, the cool evening air settling around me, and opened it. It wasn't a request for money. It wasn't a sob story. It was a simple birthday card with a picture of a sailboat on the front. Inside, Caleb had written, "Happy birthday, Mom. I know I have no right to send this. I know I lost the privilege of being your son a long time ago, but I wanted you to know that I am proud of you. I saw your picture in the paper for the elder justice work. You look strong. I'm working. It's hard, honest work. I'm paying my own rent. I'm seeing a therapist who is helping me understand how I let myself become someone Dad would have hated. I am working on becoming someone you could be proud of again. I know that day might never come, and I accept that, but I'm trying. Be happy, Mom. You deserve it. Caleb." I ran my thumb over the ink. I didn't rush to the phone. I didn't write a reply. I wasn't ready, and perhaps I wouldn't be ready for a long time. Trust, once shattered so completely, takes years to glue back together. But I didn't throw the card away. I walked into the living room and placed it on the mantel, right next to the photo of Arthur. Then I went out to the garden. I sat in my chair, my asterisk chair, and watched the fireflies dancing in the twilight. I took a sip of my tea. My life, once held hostage by obligation, manipulation, and fear, was finally my own. I had lost a son, yes, but in the process I had found myself. I thought about Mallory, answering phones in a dental office, bitter and angry. I thought about Caleb, standing on his feet all day selling televisions, finally learning the value of $1. And I thought about me, free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a lawsuit. It isn't a scream. It isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. It is refusing to be a victim. It is taking the bricks they threw at you and building a fortress of peace. So that is my story. My son tried to exploit me. His wife tried to steal from me. They tried to take my dignity, my home, and my mind. And they learned, the hard way, that this 67-year-old widow was stronger than they ever imagined. If you are reading this, and if you feel that knot in your stomach when a family member asks for money, If you feel that shadow of guilt when you say no, please listen to me. Your dignity is not negotiable. Your assets are not someone else's inheritance while you are still alive. You have the right to protect yourself, even from family, especially from family. I put down my teacup. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with a new client at the coalition. Next week, I was starting a new painting. I closed my eyes and smiled. My name is Alina Vance. I am 78 years old, and my life is just beginning.